When it comes to attraction, men don't care about your job, men don't care about your career, and men do not care about your ambition. What guys care about the most, as everybody knows, is looks. Guys care about looks the most.
So what's going to win? Looks versus personality. Let's go and get some answers. Looks or personality?
Personality.
Definitely personality.
It's got to be personality every single time.
Definitely personality.
Personality. Personality.
Hey guys, me again. So I've just finished talking to our ladies, and tonight I've got some really good news, because the majority of our ladies actually said that they all prefer personality over looks.
Guys, I'll start off by saying, and this was shown clearly in the two clips that I just showed you, that your whole life you would have almost definitely been taught the idea that men care about looks and women care about personality. Well guys, in this video I'm going to show you that in reality women are just as shallow as men for when it comes to caring about looks. Over the course of this video I'm going to show you 1. The scientific studies and facts, 2. The evolutionary reasoning, and 3. The simple common sense to support this argument that women care just as much about looks as men, and in fact they actually care more so. So let's get this started. We'll begin with the scientific data, and I have 3 studies to show you. Listen guys, I'm not here to waste your time or preach you my personal opinions. So I'll first be showing you what the scientific evidence has to say, and then towards the end of the video I'll include some personal experiences. So this first study attempted to see how well men and women's stated importance for the things they found attractive, which was found using surveys before the study, how well it lined up with what was actually important, so the things that actually led to a relationship forming. And by the end they would be able to conclude how accurately or inaccurately the stated matched up with the actual. So let's take a look at the data. This is the self-stated importance, so what people thought they were looking for in a partner. And as we can see, there are 6 desirable traits dotted around the outside of this diagram. The men's preferences are in blue and the women's preferences are in pink. Here are the results. Starting with the men, and unsurprisingly, they said that looks was the most important. No surprises there. Men then said that intelligence, fun and sincerity came in 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Now for the women. Their results were much different compared to the men. They actually rated intelligence as the most important, then sincerity, then fun. And in fact, looks was all the way down in 4th place. But honestly, this shouldn't really be surprising, because like the clips I showed at the beginning, men were open and honest in saying they care about looks, meanwhile the women said that they cared more about personality. So this is the self-stated preferences. Now, before I reveal what the study found to be actually important, I first want to show you another piece of the study that I found really interesting. So here they asked men and women what they thought people of the same sex as them were looking for. So men deciding for other men, and women deciding for other women. And again, starting with the men, they also said that other men care about looks. So men say themselves care about looks, and they're also aware that other men too care about looks. Now let's take a look at the results for women. And I found this data unbelievable, because when the women answered for themselves, they said that they didn't care about looks. However, when speaking for other women, they had the audacity to say that they care about looks the most. They had the audacity to say that they themselves aren't shallow, but other girls, they are just as bad as men for when it comes to caring about looks. I found this ridiculous, because here's the point. You know when you hear women use the phrase, "Oh, I'm not like other girls"? Well, the data we have here shows exactly the meaning of that phrase. Anyway, I found this part of the study interesting. Now moving on to the actual results. So once more, starting with the men, and in this diagram, we have the stated importance in blue, which overlaps the actual importance in green. Now obviously there is quite a few discrepancies. They don't perfectly match up. So here's what men said was important, and here's what actually turned out to be important. But the main point I want to make about this is that although the men were off for other things, they were accurate in saying that looks were the most important, and they did turn out to be the most important too. And in fact, if you look at the data closely, they were spot on. They didn't overestimate nor underestimate the importance of looks. Now let's take a look at the data for the women. And already, just off first impressions, you can see the difference between the stated importance and actual importance is much more erratic. So again, here's the stated importance. Now, here's the actual importance. As the data shows, Just like the men, looks also came in at number 1. But the main point I want to make about this study is the large difference between how important women thought looks were and how important it actually was. So the conclusion to be made for this first study is whenever you hear women say looks don't matter, and they value traits to do with your personality and character more, then you know, just like the evidence shows, they are simply lying. So that's the first study, and now I've got this out of the way, now is a good time to press the like button and leave any thoughts you have in the comments below so far, as it helps the YouTube algorithm. Anyway, moving on to the second piece of scientific evidence. Discrimination of tips. And man oh man, I only found out about this study last week, but I wish I had known about it earlier, because even this shocked me. In fact, last week I uploaded my video of my top 10 favourite data, but if I'd have known about this study that I'm about to show you, it would have 100% made the top 5, because it's really that shocking. This study was conducted in 500 restaurants, so evidently the sample size was massive. And what they did is they attempted to measure the differences in tips an unattractive waiter will get compared to an attractive waiter. And this time we'll start with the women. The data showed that on average, men will tip an extra 55 cents per order for an attractive woman compared to an unattractive woman. Now let's take a look at the results for men. And you'd probably expect the difference to be a lot less for men, because after all, the world believes and teaches that men are the one who care about looks, and they are the ones who are more likely to discriminate based on a woman's attractiveness. Well, if you thought this, then you'd be wrong, because here's what the actual data showed. Women, on average, tipped an attractive man an extra $1.07 compared to an unattractive guy. That's twice as much compared to what it was for women. This is why I said that even this study surprised me, because usually you'd expect men to be the ones to simp over women with their flowers, chocolates, and trying to impress them with their money. But in reality, this study suggests it is actually the other way round, and women are the ones simping over men, to a 2 times greater degree. And in fact guys, this coincides completely with my own experiences. It's a matter of fact that in all of my interactions with women, what I found to be by far the biggest indicator to see whether a girl is genuinely interested in me is whether she is or is not financially invested. Every time a woman has put money down and has been open to paying for things, then the relationship would work out. But every time the opposite happened and she expected myself to pay for things, then things would fizzle out rapidly. She would end up getting flaky with texts, ghosting, or something like that. I promise you guys, if a girl finds you attractive and puts money on the table, you know she is genuinely interested. Now, I've only got this level of what most people would call Chad treatment 2 times in my life. And when this happens, it's unbelievable just how easy things are. It's literally like having grapes fed to you. There are no games, and she'll either make it really clear and obvious that she wants you to meet up, or she'll even set up something herself and put in all of the work for you. So guys, I'm telling you, if you're in a position where you're paying disproportionately more than what your partner is, then she does not value you. You're only there as a beta provider. Before I move on to the next point, I want to make 2 more points on this particular study. First off, although this might not sound like a lot of money, you might be thinking, oh, it's only $1 each time, it's not really that much. Trust me, this is a lot of money. When you bear in mind that each waiter is easily going to be serving 20 plus customers each day, then that's going to add up to thousands of dollars over the course of a year. And this brings me into my next point. Now, I don't want to say too much on this because I don't want it to be the main point of the video, and I don't want my channel getting too political. But in the media, you always hear about the pay gap. People protest and march about this issue. Well, how about the attractiveness pay gap? Because as this study shows, it pays massively if you're more attractive. But my point is, I've never heard anyone talk about this issue. It is constantly swept under the rug like it doesn't even exist. Let me know your thoughts in the comments about this point, and whether or not something should be done about this. Anyway, moving on to the last study. And this one's nice and simple, taking data from the world's biggest dating app, Tinder. This data capture measured the likelihood of both men and women swiping right on any given profile. And the results showed men swipe right on an average of 46% of all profiles. Meanwhile, women swipe right on just 14%. This means that women, when it comes to online dating, are over 3 times more selective. So here's my question. If dating apps are all about looks, and it's supposedly men who care more about looks, then why are women 3 times more discriminate when ruling out options based on looks? So those are my 3 studies. Now I'm sure I'm going to get some people in the comments asking this question. Oh, but what about all those surveys that show that women do care about personality, and they don't care about looks as much? Well, this is exactly my point. Whenever you measure women's words, they will always say, just like the clip at the beginning, that personality matters more. But whenever you measure their actions, such as their tipping biases, factors that actually lead to relationships, or their swiping patterns on online dating apps, then the truth is always revealed that they do in fact care about looks. And a great example showcasing this happened in my recent interview with Alexander Grace. And at around the 40-minute mark of the discussion, Alexander Grace made this point. I can't stand the hypocrisy of women for criticising men being shallow and all about looks, when they are just as bad. And then he caveats his point, maybe not just as bad. Now I immediately disagreed with this point, and I said actually they are just as bad. Now Alexander held his ground and referenced this study, which he's actually used before in one of his videos, to support his argument. Now clearly, as the data shows, physical attractiveness is held with higher regard for men than it is for women. So this study suggests that men care about looks more than women, which should contradict everything that I've stated in the last 8 to 10 minutes. Alexander also said how reliable the study was, being conducted in 36 different countries, having data from the United Nations, and having thousands and thousands of participants. So at face value, this all sounds pretty convincing. It does sound as if it contradicts my argument. Well, not quite. Because after the discussion, I dug a little deeper into the methodology of the study, and how they produced these results. This was their methodology. They provided men and women 13 desirable traits that they would look for in a partner. So money, kindness, intelligence, personality, and of course, looks. They then had to rank these things from 1 to 13 in order of importance. And the results here is the average of their responses. But this is exactly where the issue lies. When you ask people what they think is important, it's extremely unlikely you're going to get honest answers. Of course, women aren't going to say looks are important. In fact, if I had known the methodology of how this study was going to be carried out, I could have predicted the results way before the study was published. In fact, the only thing that this study proves is that women virtue signal. This study is as good as invalid for when it comes to determining what people find attractive. Now, before I move on to the next section of the video, I just want to give a big credit to Alexander Grace. He is a highly intelligent man, and I am certain if he had known the methodology of this study, then he too would have rejected its legitimacy. This study is as worthless as all of the other things pictured here. As the old saying goes, actions speak louder than words. I don't care how many countries are involved in the study, if it's published from a man on the street or if it's published from the United Nations. I don't care if the sample size is 7 billion. If it measures people's words, I'm not going to trust it. When it comes to this topic of attraction, you must watch people's actions and not listen to their words. So that's it for the scientific studies. If you would like to read further into some of them, then the links will be found in the description box below. Anyway, now moving on to the second section, which is the evolutionary reasoning for why this is the case, and why women need to carry looks to such a high regard. And just like the studies, I also have 3 reasons. Number 1, testosterone. Testosterone is the hormone found in significantly higher concentrations for men compared with women. It also gives men much stronger desires to be intimate with women. Therefore, when men are looking at potential female partners, it takes significantly less looks to be seen as attractive. Men will likely be able to see at least some level of physical attraction for women rated as low as 4 on the 1 to 10 scale. Meanwhile, when women are looking at men, they ideally want to be dating someone at least 7+, and their desire to be intimate with anyone lower than this threshold is going to be negligible. Reason number 2, and this is probably the most important reason. The differing dating strategies of both men and women. So for men, their strategy is nice and simple. They want to spread their seed far and wide. They want to be intimate with as many women as possible, as this gives them most opportunities to pass on their genes. And this strategy is exactly why men can't afford to care about looks as much. Because let's say a man has an opportunity to reproduce with this woman. If he chooses to pass off this opportunity, then he has missed a potential to pass on his genes. Therefore, it's advantageous for men to exclude as few women as possible from their dating pool. And yes, although if a man reproduces with an unattractive woman, then the child's chance of survival will be very low, because the child will likely have genetic and health deficiencies, and the mother would likely have had to raise her child on her own, the chance of survival is still greater than 0. This is important because as long as the chance remains greater than 0, then it is beneficial for a man to take up this opportunity. And this is exactly why, on online dating apps, no matter how unattractive a woman is, she is still going to have dozens of matches. I've always said this, there is no woman on earth who is too unattractive, overweight, or old to still be flooded with options. I believe it was Alexander Grace who said, the world's most abundant resource is thirsty men. So this example is no shock, and this is way more matches than even average guys get on Tinder. So that's the male dating strategy, far and wide. Now let's see what it's like for women. And theirs is a lot different. They can't afford to go far and wide. And there's 3 reasons for this. Their eggs are a lot more scarce and valuable. Women go pregnant for 9 months, which more or less incapacitates them. On top of this, they are also going to need to raise and provide resources for a child for at least a decade. Therefore, they're going to be a lot more selective in their partner choice. And I'll explain the optimal strategy using this table that I've used in a previous video. Firstly, for the reasons I've just explained, a woman cannot afford to share her genes with a man of poor genetic quality, because this will mean the child will be weak, unhealthy, and a burden. So she ideally needs to share offspring with a man with good genetics. Therefore, the first part of the equation of dating strategy for women is alpha fuck. But that's not the only thing a woman needs to think about, because after a woman has given birth to that child, she also needs someone to bring home resources to raise the child. She will need someone to protect her and fight off predators. Therefore, she also needs a good provider. She cannot afford a bad one. Therefore, she also can't afford to reproduce with this guy, who's scarpered after reproduction. She needs a high quality man who ticks both boxes, good genetics and good provider. But there's a catch. This man is rare. It's called the top 5% for a reason. And if a man is in the top 5%, it's unlikely that he'll want to settle down and provide for somebody significantly below his level, when he has the abundance and options of women who are more attractive and younger. So if this man does choose to monogamize, then he will do it with this woman instead. So what's left for this woman? Well, she has another option. There is a way of getting around this which can satisfy both things, good genetics and a good provider, without needing to secure a high quality man. It works as follows. Take the good genetics from an alpha chad, which isn't a rarity, it's an abundance in fact, because as I explained a couple minutes ago, a man's dating strategy is to spread his seed far and wide. And then once she has had the child with a man with good genetics, she will then seek this guy to provide the resources, which again, there will also be an abundance of, as I'll explain in a second. This is the second part of the equation, beta bucks. This is a woman's optimal dating strategy, because it satisfies both the good genetics and resources that will be needed to maximise her child's chance of survival. And the data we have available shows this was the case through much of human history. DNA, evidence and analysis shows 80% of women passed on their genes, but just 40% of men did. This means, plain and simple, unless you were in that top 40%, you were nothing but a beta buxer for the tribe, to provide resources for children that weren't yours. Now, some of you might be saying, oh well, maybe this was the case in tribal times, but things are a lot different now. Nope, wrong. So, as established, during tribal times it was a matter of survival of the fittest. Only the top 40% of men passed on their genes. And then for the last few millennia, we've had enforced monogamy. Women had no other choice but to settle down with a beta provider. 2,000 years ago, adulterous women were stoned. 50 years ago, in my own country, the UK, single mothers were forced to put their children up for adoption, as they were deemed unable to raise it with due care. So my point is, for the last couple thousand years, it has been unviable in every way possible for women to do anything else but monogamize. However, in the new modern world, we have gone straight back to survival of the fittest. Single mothers are now celebrated for being strong, independent women. And the data shows we are going back to this too. In the last 30 years, the absence of intimacy rate for women has remained largely flat. For men, however, it is skyrocketing, indicating the number of men having access to intimacy is becoming more and more concentrated. The rates of single motherhood have exploded since World War II. It used to be less than 5%, it is now at over 40%. And this is largely due to the fact of the deregulation of the dating market, women falling pregnant, then looking for a beta boxer after to look after the child. At no point in history has it been more important to be good looking, and it is only pointing in that direction more so. In fact, I don't even know why I'm showing you all these charts. Any man who goes on online dating apps knows that a large part of it is single mothers looking for a beta boxer to look after their child. Anyway, so those are the two different dating strategies for both men and women. Now moving into the final section of the video, the simple common sense. Honestly guys, I don't even know why I need to make these videos, because these 6 pieces of common sense should make it so blatantly obvious that women care about looks way more than men. First off, how often do you hear about a woman rejecting a man because he's too short? Now how often do you hear men say that? In fact, not once in my life have I ever heard a man say this. I've only heard women say this, and I hear stories like this on a weekly basis. Speaking of height, when men are looking at women, their ideal height range is usually going to be somewhere in the middle. In fact, 95% of the female population falls between the heights of 5 foot and 5 foot 10. So really, for a woman, height's only going to make her struggle slightly more if she's in the bottom or top 2.5%. Meanwhile for men, the ideal is over 6 foot, which for 18 to 29 year olds, only the top 20% minority falls into. So for anyone in the bottom 80%, their height is going to be a big disadvantage. Next point, and this is a big one, only women wear makeup. How does it make sense that men care more about looks, when women are way more keen-eyed about spotting their own flaws and insecurities? In fact, here's a good example from my own life. My first girlfriend had an ever so slight negative canthal tilt. It was barely enough to notice. In fact, it was probably to a similar level as this woman has here. However, whenever we went out, she always made sure she wore eyeliner, to give the illusion of positive tilt. And I remember one day asking her, "Oh, so is this why you wear the eyeliner? To improve your canthal tilt?" And it's probably my own fault for asking such a stupid question, because of course she had no idea what I was talking about. She responded, "Oh, no, I wear it because it looks really pretty." Of course she wouldn't have a clue what canthal tilt means. But the point is, even without knowing the science behind objective attraction, she was able to identify this flaw and improve it using makeup. But for men, unless they watch my or a similar content creator's videos, they're going to be walking around in complete ignorance of the things that are making them less attractive. Moving on to the next point, there is a huge market in the modelling industry for plus size women. However, there is next to no plus size men. Actually, I dare you, go onto Google Images and just type in the words plus size. I guarantee you, 99.9% of the images that come up will be women. You'll have to scroll down ridiculously far to find just one man. Next point, and this is quite similar. The vast majority of men would find women with average bodies highly attractive. Meanwhile, when women are looking at men, they again are looking at the top 5% minority. And this leads into my last point. How often do you see overweight women with normal looking average men? I see this everywhere. If you've watched some of my live interviews, you will know that I work in schools. And every day, when the school finishes, I always see the same thing, an overweight woman with a slim man. In fact, not once have I seen the other way round, where both the man and the woman has been under 30. Ask yourself, when do you ever see the other way round, especially when it's a young couple? You'll be lucky to find one for every 50 of this instance. Anyway guys, that's the video. Honestly, if you got to this part of the video and you still don't believe that women care about looks, then I don't know what can convince you. The idea that women don't care about looks is the biggest lie of the century. Anyway, let me know what you think of this longer content format, and make sure you like the video and leave any thoughts you have in the comments below, as it helps the YouTube algorithm.